My sister took my fiancé and wanted me at their wedding, but I walked away quietly. And they never saw the fallout coming. My sister ended up with my fiancé, and to make it worse, they actually invited me to their wedding. But instead of blowing up, I just walked away quietly. They never saw the aftermath coming. This whole mess started about 2 years ago. My ex-fiancé, Derek, he was 34 at the time, and I broke things off after 5 years together. We were high school sweethearts, the couple everyone thought would last forever. We first met when I was a sophomore, and he was a senior. Music was what brought us together. He played guitar in a local garage band, and I sang in the school choir. Our first date was at this cozy little coffee shop where his band had a gig that night. I remember being so nervous I could barely sit still. But the second he started playing, it was like all that anxiety just disappeared. Not long after that night, we started dating and were practically glued at the hip all through high school and college. Once we graduated, we both landed jobs back in our hometown and decided to move in together. Life felt pretty close to perfect. We had this cute little apartment, adopted a dog we both adored, and even started talking seriously about marriage. Then on our 5th anniversary, during a weekend beach trip, Derek got down on one knee and proposed. I was over the moon. I dove headfirst into planning our dream wedding, completely convinced this was it for me. But about 6 months into the engagement, something shifted. Derek started pulling away. He got moody, distant. He'd stay out late with his buddies more often, and when we were home together, he'd snap at me over the smallest things. I tried to have real conversations with him about it, but all he ever said was that work was stressing him out. I told myself it was just pre-wedding nerves and didn't push too hard. Then one day, out of nowhere, he sat me down and said he couldn't go through with it. Said he'd fallen out of love and needed time to find himself. Just like that. It was like my entire world collapsed in a single moment. How could the man I pictured a future with suddenly want out? At the time, my younger sister Amber, she was 29, was my biggest support. She let me bawl my eyes out on her shoulder, told me I deserved better, and made me feel like I wasn't alone. Amber and I had always been close, even though we butted heads as teenagers. We shared a room growing up, stayed up whispering and laughing under the covers. In high school, we drifted apart a bit. She ran with the popular kids, and I was more of the choir and marching band type. But as adults, we found our way back to each other. We talked nearly every day. She was more than a sister, she was my best friend. So when Derek and I split, I leaned hard on her. She even offered me a place to stay since Derek and I had been living together. Helped me pack up my life, listened while I bounced between sobbing and full-blown anger. She'd show up with ice cream and gossip magazines, anything to make me smile. I honestly don't know how I would have survived those first few months without her. But then, about 6 months after the breakup, I noticed Amber started acting strange. She'd bail on plans last minute, or be really vague about what she was up to. At first, I didn't think much of it, figured she was just buried in work. She'd recently landed a big promotion in her marketing job and had been pulling long hours, so it made sense. Then, friends started dropping hints, casual comments about seeing her and Derek out together. I brushed it off. I mean, come on. My own sister? No way she'd do something like that. But the stories kept coming. One friend said they saw Amber and Derek having dinner at this fancy, candlelit restaurant. Someone else swore they saw the two of them holding hands at the movies. I finally confronted her. She denied everything at first, acted like I was paranoid and didn't trust her. But I didn't let it go. I pressed harder. Eventually, she caved. Admitted that, yeah, she and Derek had started seeing each other. Said it just happened, and that she never wanted to hurt me. But I was too blindsided to really take in her excuses. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Betrayed in the worst way. My sister, who had comforted me through the breakup, who had helped me curse Derek's name, was now dating him. Had she been lying the whole time? Was she secretly glad we broke up so she could take my place? My head was spinning with awful thoughts. I told her I never wanted to speak to her again. Blocked her number. Our parents tried to get involved, kept telling me to patch things up, but I wasn't having it. I was too hurt. The thought of them together made me physically sick. It felt like I'd lost both my fiancé and my best friend in one brutal blow. The year that followed was rough. I buried myself in work, taking extra shifts at the family hardware store to keep my mind off things. I also started volunteering at an animal shelter, which gave me a sense of purpose and helped a little. But man, I was lonely. Amber and I had shared so many mutual friends, so I pulled away from a lot of them. I didn't want to risk bumping into her, or worse, her and Derek together. I tried dating again, went on a few coffee dates here and there, but my heart just wasn't in it. After what happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that trusting anyone again might be impossible. Then last week, nearly 2 years after all of it, I get a wedding invitation in the mail. Amber and Derek are tying the knot. I couldn't believe it. After everything, they actually wanted me there. Our parents called, begging me to come. Said it was time to forgive, that family matters most. They think I'm being immature and holding a grudge. But I just can't do it. I can't sit there and smile while my sister marries the guy who shattered my heart. Just the idea of watching them exchange vows, dance, smile for photos, it makes my stomach turn. Am I wrong for saying no? Should I try to let it go and show up for the sake of keeping the family together? I honestly don't know. I'm torn, and I could really use some outside perspective. Oh, and for a little more context, Amber and I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone's business. Our parents own a hardware store that's been in the family for generations, and they're big on reputation. Always active in the community, always trying to look like the perfect family. My parents are both on the city council, heavily involved at church, and practically know everyone in town, so of course, they're mortified by the fact that Amber and I aren't speaking. They're terrified of how it'll look if I don't show up to the wedding. But honestly, it feels like they're more concerned with their reputation than how I'm actually feeling. Growing up, it was always about image. My parents pushed hard for perfection. We had to get straight A's, join every club, volunteer on weekends, anything to make the family look good from the outside. The pressure to meet those expectations was constant. I think that's part of why Amber started rebelling when we were teenagers. Meanwhile, I went the other way, tried to be the good girl. Always doing what I thought would make everyone proud. Over the past 2 years, Amber has reached out a few times to apologize. I haven't responded. I just can't. I miss what we had, I do. We used to be so close. We had wine and rom-com nights, shopping trips, late-night calls for every little crisis. Losing that bond, it left a hole in my life I haven't been able to fill. But every time I even think about forgiving her, I remember how she sat across from me and lied to my face while secretly seeing Derek. And Derek? He hasn't said a word. Not a text, not an email, nothing. That might hurt more than anything. After 5 years together, it's like I never mattered at all. We used to talk about a future. Marriage, kids, growing old together. How could he toss all that aside and move on so quickly, with my sister no less? Did any of it mean anything to him? I know I need to let go eventually. For my own peace. But right now, the pain still feels fresh. The thought of putting on a fake smile at their wedding and pretending everything's fine makes me want to scream. I'd be sitting there, watching them declare their love, knowing full well their relationship started with lies and betrayal. I'd have to grin through photos and small talk with guests who probably know every detail of the gossip. Just thinking about it makes my chest tighten. So I keep asking myself, am I justified in skipping the wedding and keeping my distance? Or am I being petty and need to suck it up for the sake of the family? The pressure from my parents is relentless. They act like forgiveness is as simple as flipping a switch. Like pretending everything's okay will somehow make it okay. And deep down, I'm scared that if I don't try to make things right now, I might regret it for the rest of my life. But after a lot of soul-searching, I made my decision. I told them I wasn't going to the wedding. They did not take it well. My mom started crying, saying I was ripping the family apart. She told me she'd always dreamed of both her daughters getting married and that I was ruining her vision. My dad? He got angry. Called me selfish and immature. He even threatened to cut me out of the family business, where I've worked part-time since high school, if I didn't get over it and attend. I knew they wanted me there, but I wasn't prepared for that level of guilt-tripping and threats. It opened my eyes to how unhealthy some of our family dynamics really are. Growing up, we were taught that family loyalty came before everything. We had to put on a united front, no matter what was really happening behind closed doors. I remember once in high school, Amber and I got into a fight. I can't even remember what it was about, and I told my parents I didn't want to go to her piano recital. They grounded me for a month and said I was being a terrible sister. Family first, always. That was their rule. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised by how they're acting now. But it still stings to see how little my pain seems to matter compared to how we look to everyone else. They think that if I just show up, slap on a smile, and pose for a few photos, everything will magically be fine. But they don't understand how deep the wounds go. They don't see the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the heartbreak. A few days after that fight with my parents, Amber showed up at my place unannounced. For a second, I thought about not answering the door, but something in me said to just hear her out. She begged me to reconsider. Said the wedding wouldn't feel right without me there. She insisted she never meant to hurt me, that her thing with Derek just happened. She tried to take me down memory lane, reminded me of our childhood, all the good times, how we used to promise we'd be each other's maid of honor someday. But all I could think about was how she stole the man I was supposed to marry, and lied to my face while doing it. I told her calmly that I appreciated the apology, but I'm not in a place where I can celebrate her wedding to the guy who shattered my heart. I asked her to respect that and give me space. That's when she snapped. Said I was being selfish and accused me of ruining her special day. We ended up shouting at each other. I finally told her to leave. Ever since, I've felt completely drained. Like there's no good way forward. Part of me wonders if it'd be easier to just give in and go, pretend like I'm okay, just to make peace. But the other part of me knows that would mean betraying myself. And right now, I'm not sure I can do that. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about leaving town. Putting real distance between myself and all this chaos. There's a job opening in another state, marketing for a wildlife conservation nonprofit. It's right up my alley, since I've always had a soft spot for animals. It might be the clean slate I need. A chance to breathe again. And getting out of this tiny town, where everyone knows everyone else's business, sounds more appealing by the day. Still, the idea of starting over somewhere new is terrifying. This is the only place I've ever called home. My life's here, my job, my volunteer work, the few friendships I've managed to hold on to. Walking away from all that would be a massive shift. And I hate the thought of Amber and Derek winning, like they've pushed me out of my own life. And truthfully, I've been dealing with a lot of loneliness. Most of my closest friends were mutual with Amber, and after everything happened, I pulled away from that whole group. I threw myself into work to distract myself, but it's not fulfilling anymore. I've tried joining some local groups, made an effort to meet new people, but I keep hitting this emotional wall. It's hard to trust, hard to open up, when you're carrying around so much hurt. And then there's the family business. I've worked there part-time since high school, always assumed I'd help run it one day. It's been passed down for generations. There was a time I was proud to be part of that legacy. But now, I'm not so sure. If I choose to leave, I'll be walking away from a legacy that's been part of my family for generations. And I know my parents would take that as a deep betrayal. But at the same time, the thought of staying here, stuck in this town, stuck in the shadow of all this drama, makes me feel completely suffocated. I'm honestly torn. Part of me wants to hold my ground, not let Amber and Derek's choices chase me out of the only place I've ever called home. But another part of me craves distance. I want a clean slate where I'm not constantly reminded of what I've lost. I don't even know if I'm strong enough to stick around and face the fallout from not going to the wedding. Has anyone else dealt with being cut off from family? How do you handle all the pressure to forgive when you're just not ready? I'm desperate for advice, on boundaries, on mental health, on how to stay true to myself without feeling like I'm tearing everything apart. I feel like I'm standing at a fork in the road, and whichever path I choose will define the rest of my life. Eventually, things reached a breaking point. I thought long and hard about that job offer out of state, and in the end, I decided to go for it. I figured some physical and emotional distance might be exactly what I need to reset and breathe again. But when I told my parents, they completely lost it. My dad said I was abandoning the family. He threw everything in my face, how they paid for my college, helped me get on my feet, supported me all these years. My mom, on the other hand, hit me with guilt. She cried and said I was breaking her heart, that she might never forgive me if I left. Their reactions only confirmed that leaving was the right call. It made me realize just how tangled and codependent our family relationships had become. It's not normal for adults to be controlled like this, not by guilt, not by expectations. So I quietly started making arrangements. I gave my notice at work, started packing up my apartment, and found a friend willing to take care of my pets until I was settled in the new city. Sorting through my things was a roller coaster, bittersweet, really. So many items triggered memories of Derek, or Amber, or who I used to be. But going through it all felt necessary, like shedding a version of myself I'd outgrown to make room for someone stronger, more whole. Word spread fast in our little town. People started calling, texting, trying to check in. Most meant well, but it was awkward dancing around the real story. I kept it vague, just told them I'd landed a new opportunity and needed a change. Then, the day before I was set to leave, Amber and Derek showed up at my apartment. Uninvited. They said they'd heard I was moving and wanted to talk before I left. Derek even had the audacity to say he hoped we could all be friends again someday. That was it. I lost it. All the pain, all the anger I'd bottled up over the last 2 years, it came pouring out. I told them exactly how I felt. I told Amber she wasn't just a bad sister, she was the one person who knew how broken I was and still chose to make it worse. And I looked Derek in the eye and reminded him of every promise he ever made to me. How we talked about forever. I asked how he could walk away from all that so easily, and worse, walk into a relationship with my own sister. I told them both I hoped they'd have a lovely life together, but that I wanted no part in it. Not now, not ever. Amber started crying. Derek got defensive, saying I was being overly dramatic and needed to let the past go. That only made me angrier. I told them to get out. I meant it. I never want to see or speak to either of them again. Once they left, I broke down. It felt like I was reliving every piece of the heartbreak all over again. But at the same time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. For the first time, I had finally spoken my truth instead of trying to keep the peace. I spent my last evening in town with a couple of close friends who had stayed by my side through everything. We shared memories, hugged a lot, and they wished me the best as I headed into this new chapter. It was emotional, but for once, I felt hopeful. The next morning, I packed up the car, turned the key, and drove out of town. As I crossed the city limits, I felt a strange mix of sadness and freedom. I was leaving behind everything I knew, my childhood, my job, my routines, but also a lot of pain, guilt, and betrayal. I was finally driving towards something new. A chance to build a life that wasn't shaped by old wounds. I'm more convinced than ever that this was the right move. I'm excited to explore a new city, start fresh at a job that aligns with what I care about, and hopefully meet people who make me feel seen and safe again. It's not going to be easy. I know that. Starting over never is. But I believe it's necessary for me to truly heal and move forward. To those of you who suggested therapy, thank you. I found a therapist in my new city and already have my first appointment scheduled for next week. I'm hopeful that it'll help me unpack everything, work through the trauma, and finally learn to set boundaries that protect my peace. Thanks to everyone who's offered support during this time. Your words have helped me more than you know. And now, with some space and a clearer view, I can finally see just how unhealthy things had become back home. Those first few weeks in my new city weren't easy. I was hit with this wave of loneliness and second-guessing, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake by leaving everything familiar behind. Everything felt unfamiliar and kind of overwhelming. But little by little, things started to shift. As I got into the rhythm of my new job and began exploring the area, I found myself slowly settling in. My coworkers, especially the folks in my department, have been incredibly kind. They made me feel welcome right away. I also joined a local hiking group and managed to make a few new friends through that. It's been good to get out in nature again, stretch my legs, and connect with people who have nothing to do with my past. Therapy has become a regular part of my routine, and honestly, it's been a game changer. My therapist is helping me work through all the complicated emotions tied to Amber and Derek's betrayal, but also the deeper stuff, the old patterns and unhealthy dynamics I grew up with in my family. I'm finally starting to understand what boundaries really mean. And more importantly, I'm learning how to protect my peace and prioritize my own well-being without feeling guilty about it. I didn't go to Amber and Derek's wedding. My parents called and tried everything: guilt trips, emotional appeals, even last-minute pleas to fly back, but I stayed firm. And from what I've heard through a few mutual friends, the wedding wasn't exactly picture-perfect. Apparently, there was plenty of family drama, and people were buzzing about why I wasn't there. Part of me feels a little guilty knowing my absence stirred up tension. But deep down, I know that being there would have been way worse for my mental health. I made the right call. Amber and Derek haven't reached out, and I haven't tried to contact them either. My parents are still pushing for a reunion, saying it's time to forgive, time to move on. But I've told them clearly, I'm not ready, and I don't know if I ever will be. Maybe that'll change one day. Maybe not. Right now, I'm focused on healing. Work has been going great. It's challenging, but in the best way. I'm learning a ton about wildlife conservation and feel like I'm contributing to something meaningful. It's refreshing to feel proud of the work I'm doing. My boss even hinted that there might be a promotion in the near future, which honestly blew me away. Outside of work, I've started building a real life here. I joined a book club that meets every other Thursday, and I've been taking a pottery class on weekends. There's something really grounding about working with your hands, shaping clay, getting messy, letting go of perfection. I've even been on a few dates. Nothing serious yet, but it feels good to be putting myself out there again. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can just breathe, like I'm finally living for me, not just reacting to everyone else's expectations. Of course, it's not all sunshine and peace. I still have my moments. Some days the sadness creeps in. Other days I get flashes of anger over how everything played out. And yeah, I miss the bond one used to have with Amber. Especially around the holidays. That's when it hits the hardest. But overall, I'm in a much better place, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Leaving town was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I know in my heart it was the right one. Now I'm thinking long term. I've started looking into buying a house instead of renting. I've even thought about adopting a dog again. I really miss having a little four-legged companion around. For the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful. I'm making plans. I'm dreaming again. That alone feels like a small miracle. My relationship with my parents? Still complicated. We talk here and there, mostly surface-level stuff. There's definitely tension. I think they're having a hard time accepting that I've carved out a life for myself that doesn't revolve around them. I'm doing my best to stay in touch while still enforcing boundaries that protect my peace. It's a balancing act, and I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying. And that's what matters right now.